And welcome to the Howard Eskin Show. Uh, and I say this every time because I try to make all my guests special. Uh, my guest tonight is special in his own way. His own way. You'll find out why. Uh, Former Major League umpire, and everybody loved him. No, they didn't. Actually, they didn't. But not everybody. And there's probably some that did. But Joe West will be our guest, and then we'll talk to Joe, and we'll go over some interesting situations. I'm sure he's had some ones that I've heard about, and then afterwards, obviously, we got to deal with the Eagles. Some situations they have an injury, and this is why I think they picked up a player because I think the player that got injured is going to be out for a little while. But we'll talk about that. We'll talk about a lot of things, and Flyers had their first news conference today. For Flyers fans, yeah, I'm going to take care of you. We're going to announce our winner of the Chickies and Pete's gift certificate and a chance to win a pair of Oakley sunglasses. We'll do all that tonight. But I want to mention to you, and you know it, the presenting sponsor of this program is Stillwell Financial Advisors. Jeff Stillwell. Hey, in the world we live in today, financially, there's some things, if you don't know them, you're going to lose out on trying to secure and make sure you have money and finances for the future. But Jeff Stillwell can help you out. Sharp, sharp, sharp guy. Trust me on this one. Sharp guy. Give him a call, 732-343-0813. So the Eagles have a game on Sunday, and I don't think it's going to be an easy game, and I'll tell you why. But before I do that, I want to tell you about another one of our partners, and that would be Audi Westchester. Audi Westchester, and this sale on electric cars is going to be around maybe another couple of weeks, and that's it. So if you want to get a great deal on a 2025 Audi Q6 e-tron, $499 a month, or an Audi Q4 e-tron for $399 a month, you'll need $5,295 down for the Q6, $4,156 down for the Q4, plus taxes and registration fees. Stop by Audi Westchester. Have some fun looking at some new cars. Check out their new facility. Have a cup of coffee. Have some snacks. 1421 Wilmington Pike. Remember, this special offer is not going to last much longer. The tax credits on electric cars also go away by the end of the month. The Q6 e-tron for $499 a month, or the Q4 e-tron for $399 a month. AudiWestchester.com. And you know you missed out by not taking care of your ground and make it really nice to go outside so you can hang outside during the summer months, maybe build a pool. Piazza Property Pros. 25 years of experience tells you all you need to know. If you waited too long, don't wait any longer. As long as the weather's decent, and it's decent going to be here until December, you can get things done by Piazza Property Pros, whether it's landscaping, excavation, fencing, pool maintenance, a new pool. You can get it done now so you have it for next summer. Trust Piazza Property Pros. Their number, and they'll work within your budget. Their number 610-566-2608. Schedule a free consultation. That's 610-566-2608, or check them out, piazzaoutdoor.com. All right. Our guest, uh, you know, to know him is not to love him. To not know him maybe is to love him. And that would be former Major League umpire who's umpired more games in Major League Baseball than any other umpire. I don't know how somebody didn't take his head off before 5,000. I think it's 5,460 games. It's a lot of games to umpire. Joe West is our guest. Welcome, Joe.
Well, thanks for having me, Howard. I never thought a man like you would call me for an interview like this, but I'm humbled that you did.
We're going to say that when we're done.
I can remember a banquet we did years ago, and you got up and asked the audience, what's the difference between a dead dog in the highway and Joe West laying in the highway and you said there would be skid marks in front of the dead dog. I remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's right. Well, that's probably a lot of the managers that wanted to do that. Joe, why? Joe, you umpired a lot of games. Why? Either you tried to do it. Why did people think you were such a bad guy, or why were you such a bad guy when it came
Uh,
to the umpiring?
I don't know that I was a bad guy. I had somebody the other day said something at the golf course, said you made a lot of controversial calls, and I said,
Yeah.
no, I didn't make any controversial calls. I was either right or I was wrong. Where this controversial stuff came from, that came from the media or from somebody who was pulling for the team that didn't get the call. I didn't make any controversial calls. I was either right or I was wrong. And the crazy thing about it is I was very lucky when I got in the playoffs, the World Series, even the All-Star games. I didn't have a controversial play that you could say that I made a mistake in.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a Jimmy Joyce play with where a perfect game was on it. I didn't have a play at first base in the World Series where I missed it. You know what I mean? Like Don Deckinger had. And I was very lucky that uh, when I got in the bigger games, I made the right call at the right time. And some of that's luck, and some of that is preparation, and some of that is not putting up with any grief from one side or the other. I had a series in Philadelphia with the Pirates, and then in the bottom of the inning, the shortstop at second base was off the bag on the first end of a double play, so I called the guy safe at second base. Now the Pirates over in the third base dugout could see that the shortstop was off the bag. Jay Bell was off the bag, and they could see it. They didn't say a word. They didn't say anything. Now, the next inning, the second baseman, I forget who the second baseman was for the Phillies, he was off the bag at second base the same way. He didn't get the first out. So I called him safe. Well, before Fregosi could get to the foul line because he couldn't see from the first base dugout, I had to kick him out for his language. So is that a controversial play? No, I called both of those plays right, and I ended up kicking a guy out of the game. That's that's not fair. And I think people don't understand, all those people are pulling for one side or the other.
Okay, so when you kick a guy out of the game, does it have to be profanity?
No.
Or okay, so if it lasts too long, I wasn't a Fregosi fan, so you could have kicked him out of every game, and I wouldn't have cared. But I was not one of his fans, and he was not one of mine either, actually.
Well, I
But
can I can see where he wasn't one of yours, but
but when you had a controversial play,
I just
now
told I just told you I didn't have any controversial plays.
okay, all
I
right,
was
so
either right or I was wrong.
okay, but why? And I believe you lead uh, from the modern era, which starts in like 1920. You led umpires. You were the leader in ejections of players, managers, coaches. I think you threw out a general manager one time too.
Well,
I,
we did that in Atlanta, but I wasn't the leader. I was like number 5 on the list, and there are 4 other guys in front of me, and none of them worked as many games as I did. So you can't say I kicked out the most. You can't.
yeah, but you had 100. I think you had 190 some ejections.
Yeah.
Something. I mean, you can't be right every time.
Well, why
Uh,
not? Why not?
because
Here's the best thing about that. I was there 44 years.
yeah.
Now you take 44 years and divide it into uh, all those ejections. That's not a whole lot. That's not 5 a season. So
Well, you don't have as many. You don't have as many now because there's no arguments at the bases because you have replay, and then home plate. I guess you can throw out a guy automatically if he's arguing balls and strikes, so he tries to find something else to argue about. But the managers are pretty much well. Now I guess the batters because they can argue with your balls and strikes. But all right, let's go down the list here. What managers did you think were the toughest to deal with and the most and in the same vein the most annoying?
Well, I only had Earl Weaver in 2 spring training games, and I kicked him out of both of those. I had Dick Williams, who was a tough man to deal with, and he would actually tell you I didn't like umpires. I hated umpires, and yet Dick Williams was as good a manager as there was.
Hmm.
Uh, Jimmy Leland was tough to deal with because he was on top of the game. Whitey Herzog was tough to deal with, but they were fair, And if a guy was fair, you didn't hold that against him. Uh, we had some managers that were incompetent, and I won't get into that, and those were the ones you really didn't like to deal with. And you forget that when we kick out somebody, you got to write a report. And I wasn't really good on the paperwork, so
Well, you gotta know how to spell to be able to
well,
write a report.
yeah, that's true. Speaking of spelling, my brother asked me one day. He said, I went to the game with you at Camden Yards, and he said, I want to know why the the sign in front of the umpire's door says umpire's locker room, and underneath it's written in Braille. He said, I want to know why that is. Did you know that?
No.
The sign at the locker room in Baltimore, underneath the writing umpire's locker room, it's written in Braille again. So
Well, that's a message to the umpire.
was that so we can get in?
Yeah. Well, okay. So the managers are always tough. The
Well,
players now.
but they're taking up for their team. Here's the funny thing: Bobby Cox got kicked out more than anybody,
Yeah.
and usually it was because he's taking up for a player because he didn't want you to kick his player out. And we had situations where Bobby would come out and say, "I heard what came out of the dugout. Kick me out. Don't kick my player." And the umpire would kick him out. And when I was president of the union, we got a call one day. They wanted to fine the umpire for kicking out the wrong guy. I said, "You can't do that." Bobby was taking up for his guy. And if you want to find out who said it, you find Bobby about 10 grand. You'll find out real quick who said it. So, but the point is, Bobby was taking up for his team, and that's why he got kicked out. I think Weaver actually told me one day on a golf course. He said, "You know why I was so fiery? It's because if we don't win, I'm going to get fired." Now, this is a guy that never got fired, and yet he was fire and brimstone every day out there. He was like a
Good manager. Good
yeah.
manager. Yeah.
And but here's the crazy thing: you get him away from the baseball field, he was a perfect gentleman. I've seen him at charity golf tournaments, and he was one of the nicest people there. He'd sign autographs for anybody. He was a great person to have at a golf tournament.
Okay. Do you remember a moment? We'll start with the managers. You remember a good moment or a bad moment where you kind of saved the guy from getting thrown out, but a good moment or a bad moment? And you probably had a lot of them.
Well, I mean, there are times when I remember Charlie Manuel one day was trying to get kicked out, and I wouldn't kick him out.
I remember that actually.
And we had Buddy Black did the same thing when we were in Pittsburgh. He just started managing. He's trying to get kicked out, and I wouldn't kick him out. But
that annoys him more than anything.
Yeah. Oh, and I remember one day Larry Bowa was trying to get kicked out, and he's yelling at Eric Gregg, and it's 100 degrees on that AstroTurf, and Eric turned and said, "If I got to stay out here in this heat, so do you. I'm not kicking you out." So, but there's all kinds of things that have happened out there. Some of them are funny, some of them are dangerous, some of them. Our biggest problem, and I had a meeting with the Players Association. Our whole board went to meet with the Players Association just as Joe Torre was taking over the umpire department. And I was sitting in there, and I said, guys, I've been umpiring over 30 years, and I've never kicked out a ball player or a manager. And they all looked around the room like, what is he talking about? And I said, they kick themselves out. And usually that's what happens. And I talked to Tony during that meeting. Tony Clark was the head of the Players Association.
Right.
I said, your biggest problem, Tony, is you don't educate the young player when he comes to the big leagues as his etiquette as to how he should handle things. And I said, and umpires are just as bad too, because we don't educate our young umpires the way we should and tell them how they should conduct themselves too. So it's a mutual thing. And here's something people don't realize, and I think you understand it, but you like being the instigator.
A little bit.
Baseball is a family. There's the bat boy, there's the ball boy, there's the ticket, the usher ticket, the guy in the parking lot. It's a family, and you have to respect the entity of baseball, because without baseball, there's nothing there. And I remember a guy yelling at me one day in Shea Stadium. He says, "Why don't you like our manager, Dallas Green?" And I looked up and I said, "I do like Dallas Green." He said, "Well, you're always yelling at him." I said, "I yell at my wife too. That doesn't mean I don't like her." So the things that people do and say in the heat of wanting their team to do well is really interesting. And I mean, you hear some really funny things from the fans. I remember working a game in Houston, and Johnny Mitch is catching, and this guy on the first base side by the Houston dugout is ripping me to pieces. And he's sitting about 6 rows up. And in the 4th inning, he finally lost his voice. And Bench looked around at me and said, "You got him now." Like, but they see those things, they hear those things, and like we talked about before we went on there, there's not a whole lot you can say to me or any other umpire that worked a few years that he hasn't heard. So
Dallas Green was a fiery guy. But before we get to Dallas Green, you brought up Larry Boa. When Larry Boa was a manager and he knew he couldn't do it with the players, and he was, as a player, bopping up and down and yelling at you. Do you remember any confrontation with Larry Boa when either was a manager or a player?
well, yeah, when Tony Gwynn got kicked out, he came out and asked him what he said. And Tony said, I told him if he thought that was a strike, he's out of his mind. And he started yelling at Tony. He didn't yell at the umpire.
That's when he was the manager at San Diego.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and Bo would bop up and down, and his head would be bobbing at the umpire right in your face. And sometimes the umpire, it got to him. Some umpires, they let it get to him. You just stood there, I guess, and then you just let him, talk himself out more than
Well,
anything else.
the greatest piece of advice I ever got came from Doug Harvey. And I was a young umpire, and Doug actually asked for them to put me on his crew.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave Kingman was hitting for the Mets, I think it was. Either the Mets or the Cubs, I don't remember. But anyway, he didn't like a 2-strike pitch I called on him. And the next pitch was ball 4. And he said something really sarcastic and smart going to first base on ball 4. Well, here I am. I just called ball 4, and I'm chasing him down the first baseline, screaming at him. Now, no one understood what was going on because they didn't know what he said. And between the innings, Doug Harvey walked down to me and he says, on your worst day, you're going to be better than all these players. On your very worst day, you're going to be better than all of them. He said, don't let them get you upset. Don't let them ruin your day. What was the best piece of advice I ever got? I don't think from that point on that I ever yelled at a player unless it was trying to break up a fight or something.
Joe, I remember there was a game in Philadelphia, and I forget which player told me. There was a player at the plate. You were at second base, and the player asked you to move because I don't guess. I know he felt that you were in the vision of the pitcher releasing the ball. So he asked you, and you wouldn't move. I was told you wouldn't move at second base. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember a couple of us guys did that because we didn't want to be taken out of position. But if it's the one I'm remembering, it was with Terry Tata, and I think it was Dykstra. I think Dykstra got kicked out of the game.
I wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, but I mean, you can't ask the umpire to move out of position.
Yeah, but if the batter has trouble seeing the ball come out of the pitcher's hand, the umpire should work with him a little bit, right?
Oh yeah, we used to move for Mike Schmidt all the time because we worked tight at second base on the inside of the diamond. He'd come to bat, and if he could see you out of the vision of the pitcher throwing the ball, he'd ask you to move, and we would move. I don't remember the exact thing that happened with Dykstra, but I do recall he got kicked out one time over something that trivial. But Schmidt would ask us to move. He'd put his hand on top of his head and ask us to move. We did that.
Okay. What players were, and players just bitch about balls and strikes all the time because they think they got the strike zone down. What players were the toughest for you or the most argumentative for you?
Well, the Pirates had a guy when I first started named Tim Foley.
Oh, I remember Tim, shortstop.
Yeah, and he was a pretty steady shortstop. I think he was on the Pirate team that won the World Series. But he was tough to deal with because he knew just enough of the rules where he would he would get in an argument for no reason. Another tough guy to deal with was Socia with the Dodgers, and
Really?
then he later became with the Angels. Yeah, and sometimes I think they overthought what was going on out there. I did see Socia make a play in spring training one time that I didn't think he was smart enough to. But it was a line drive hit back at the pitcher. It went between his legs and it hit the pitcher's mound, and it went toward the dugout. And the pitcher tried to go pick it up and throw the guy out, and he couldn't get to the ball fast enough to pick it up. So just as he's about to bend down to pick it up, Socia said, "Let it go, don't touch it." Well, when the ball went foul, it became a foul ball because it has to go past the base.
I
Well,
didn't. I never thought of that.
yeah, well, I didn't know that he knew that, but he was smart enough to say something and don't pick. And the pitcher stopped right there. Guy came back. It was a strike added to the count. Now good.
That's interesting. So if it hits the rubber and it doesn't get past the base and nobody touches it and
Well,
it goes foul, it's a foul ball.
that's the key. If the pitcher had touched it,
Right.
it would still
Obviously.
be in play.
Yeah.
But it can't touch anybody. It hits the pitcher's plate and it goes foul. It's foul. It's gotta
Okay.
go by.
So how many players don't know the rules?
Oh, most of them.
That's
Well,
stupid, huh?
no, I don't know. I don't think they have sat down long enough to try to go through the rule book. Like when you go to umpire school,
Hmm.
you have a test every day on a section of the rule book. So the umpires usually learn the rule book pretty quickly. But the players, they're hitting, they're fielding, and they have a lot more on their mind than learning this rule or that rule. I mean, there's a lot of intricacies. I can remember when Bob Horner first came to the major leagues as a Brave, and there was an infield fly behind the shortstop. And Pat Rocket went out and got under the ball, and we called infield fly. And then Jeff Burris called him off. The left fielder called him off, but we already had an infield fly because the shortstop could have caught it with ordinary effort. Well, now Burris doesn't get to the ball and it falls. So the runner on second base for the Padres took off, ran to third. So Horner stretched to catch the throw from the outfield. Well, because it's an infield fly, it's not a force play. He's got to tag him now. So he catches the ball. I call the guy safe at third base. The whole Atlanta Brave team emptied on the field going to argue about it. Because now the whole team, it wasn't just Horner, but Horner didn't know that an infield fly, the batter's out, so now you have to tag the guy if the ball's dropped. And of course, the runner can advance at his own risk. But little things like that. And what was funny was Ed Runge was in the press box, Paul Runge's father.
Yeah,
Ed,
the umpire.
Ed umpired in the American League for years. And after the game, he came down and said hello. And he says, "I really appreciate you making that call. You made me a star in the press box because I got to explain the rule."
I know it truly is amazing. If you had to identify one player, and it's probably hard with all the years, what was it, 44 years you were an umpire in Major League Baseball, or 45 years, 44, 45, you know better than I do. But is there one player you can identify that over time, and you probably, I would think of being the National League because most of those years you were just a National League umpire when they had the umpires in each league. Can you identify a player or maybe a couple of players that were the biggest pains in the ass?
Oh, well, some of them were nice.
They weren't nice if you called them out on
Well,
strikes.
Adrian Beltre, he'd take a pitch right down the middle, and you call it strike. He's that ball's outside, and he was just teasing, you know. And I got asked one day, he says, "Who's the guy that complains the most?" And I said, "Adrian Beltre." And then I explained what it was, and so the commissioner fined me for saying that about Beltre.
Why? But did he complain? But he complained the most, right?
We complained, but he was being, in jest,
Oh, okay. So he
He,
wasn't
he
really complaining. He was just giving you
yeah,
a hard time. Uh,
yeah.
but there had to be the star players, I think, because you see them at the plate. If they take a pitch and they think it's a ball and the umpire calls it a strike, they think they know better than the umpire. And I've seen usually with star players, the average guys just kind of say, oh, okay. The star players think they got it all. They got they know balls and strikes better than anybody. So is there one of those players that you remember being a pain in the ass?
Well, I wouldn't have called him a pain in the ass, but Gary Carter had two strikes on him, one when he caught and one when he hit. It was
Oh
completely different.
yeah, right.
Completely different. And I don't know if there weren't many better clutch players than Gary Carter. I mean, he didn't have a 300 batting average. He didn't hit a bunch of home runs like this kid that's playing for Seattle now. But if the game was on the line, you got a guy at second base, he'd usually drive him in. You had another guy like Billy Russell. Billy Russell, I don't think he ever hit 240. But if the guy was on second base in the eighth inning, he usually drove him in. And you look at guys like that, and you can't even acknowledge the value of what kind of player that is from what he did because he drove in the run when he needed it. And then I've heard people talk about Ted Williams being the greatest hitter that ever lived, but Ted Williams never won a World Series. In fact, he didn't play very well in the World Series he was in. But the point being, there are big moments in sport. And one of the greatest things you and I both done is we were there to witness a piece of history. And we did it every day. And some days the history is a little bit bigger than others. I mean, I had Nolan Ryan's fifth no-hitter. I had Willie McCovey's 500th home run. I had Clay Buchholz's only no-hitter. And it was only like the second day he was in the big leagues. And things like that, you look back on and you go, geez, that's pretty cool. That's pretty interesting, I remember when the Phillies played the Yankees in the World Series, the last World Series the Yankees won.
2009.
Yeah. My mother flew up with a couple of her cousins, and they had kids. I don't know why you would bring kids to a World Series game, but they brought them, right? So Philadelphia being tough to get into the ballpark, they decided to give us a police escort from the hotel. Well, those kids they brought from North Carolina didn't care about the game once they got a police escort to the ballpark. They thought that was the greatest thing in the world. Can we do this tomorrow? So, but it's amazing that people live and die for their team. And I remember people asking me when I was growing up, they said, did you have a favorite team? And I said, not really. I said I had favorite players that I thought were really good players. In fact, Joe Morgan asked me who I thought the best player I ever saw was. I said, Willie Mays.
Yeah.
He said, you didn't have Willie Mays. I said, I know, it's a good answer for me, isn't it?
Yeah, because Willie Mays you didn't start umpiring until 76.
Right.
Mays was done in 72, 73.
He was already gone. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, so you lied about that. See,
No, I didn't. I told the truth. He was probably the best player I ever saw.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'll tell you a good Joe Morgan story. He was playing second base, and they're playing the Pirates. And the ball got in the dirt and hit Johnny Bench in the shoulder and bounced out about 8 or 10 feet from him. So Garner took off going to second. So he's about halfway there, and Joe Morgan's going, stand up, stand up. Bench picked up the ball and threw him out, right? I mean, he's going to be out by a good 2 steps.
Right.
So Morgan caught the ball and wouldn't tag him because he told him to stand up, right?
His teammates had to be real happy about that.
Well, the first guy yelled at him was Concepcion. The second guy yelled at him was Bench. And then the third guy yelled at him was Garner. because he told him to stand up, right? And Joe's at second base waving his arms. I told you not to slide. That's why I didn't tag you, you idiot, blah, blah, blah. And he turned around and looked at me and he says, I should have just dropped the damn ball.
Well, I probably could have done that. I remember, and there's probably memorable games even for you as an umpire, and you had quite a few World Series and playoffs. Two games I remember: the World Series, and you talk about Gary Carter. I knew Gary Carter really well. Really, really good guy. May he rest in peace. Terrific guy. That game, I'll call it the Bill Buckner game, where the ball went through his legs. I was there. Carter was one of the guys in the inning, I guess, that had all those hits. They had I think they had 17 pitches with 2 strikes and didn't make an out in that game. That was the Garner game. And then the game in Houston, where Nolan Ryan had never lost a game where he had a lead in the 7th inning. It was the playoffs, the Phillies in Houston. They went on to win a World Series that year, one of the greatest playoff series ever. Phillies in Houston, they in 1980, and they won. They came back and they won that game against Nolan Ryan. Do you remember a game that sticks out in your mind in a playoff or World Series?
Well, probably the game that you would remember and most everybody in America would remember was that Alex Rodriguez play at first base where he slapped the ball out of Arroyo's hand.
Right, I do remember that.
Yeah. So when the first base umpire signaled safe, we couldn't overturn it. We couldn't go up and say no, that's interference. And I think he missed the play because he had so many people in front of him.
Right.
Yeah. But anyway, so the Red Sox are about to argue, and I stopped Francona. I went down and I said, give us a minute. So I came out to Randy Marsh, and Jeff Kellogg came down from right field. And I said, did you see him reach out and grab the glove with his left hand? And of course, Randy's eyes got big as silver dollars. He says, no. I said, well, Randy, we're going to have to call him out. And I said, because if we don't, you will have made the wrong ruling, and this is too important for us not to fix it. So,
right.
So now we called everybody in. The left field umpire, the right field, the right field umpire is already there. Everybody else comes in. John Hirschbeck says, Joe, are you sure? And I said, we wouldn't be having this meeting if I wasn't sure. Anyway, so Randy goes to call him out. I said, wait a minute, Randy. I said, when we call him out, they're going to throw everything in the world at us. He said, I know. I said, do you want me to call it? He said, no, it's my call. I'll change it. And so he did. And they did. They threw everything at us. We had to take the teams off the field. Somebody threw their car keys at Hirschbeck at third base, and it was a BMW.
I would have gone in the parking lot, found that car, and taken it.
That's what I told him. I said, we need to go out in the parking lot and find this car. Anyway, so now we've got the teams off the field, and I go to the third base dugout where the police are, because if the Yankees win this game, the series is over.
Uh-huh.
And so I get over there, and I guess he was a sergeant or something. I said, we're going to need to have a show of strength here. You guys are going to have to line the field. And he was a little snippy, but I understood what he was saying. He said, are you telling me, or is Major League Baseball telling me? I said, well, let me make it clear for you. If I get to home plate and you guys haven't lined the field, this game's over. He said, yes, sir. And he took off. And they lined the field. And in like 3 minutes, they had arrested 16 people. And we played that inning with them out there. I think we played the next half inning with them out there. But and the commissioner's office, well, they were upset.
I bet they were.
Because we lined the field with the police. And their security people went and told the commissioner, that's what he needed to do. You think we were going to control 60,000 people just by telling them, no, don't do that? Yeah. So, and that was, I remember that play because there was so much involvement. And then the next day, when we went to home plate, we actually got a slight applause from the New York fans because we called it right. The people on the air took up for us because we made the right call. and they actually stood up and applauded when we took the field. It's the only time I ever got any kind of ovation for walking on the field.
You know what? That brings something to mind, and I don't know if I've seen it. There's probably a game where the manager comes out with the lineup card, and the day before, he gave you a hard time, or you gave him a hard time. Did you ever throw a manager out before the game started because he started arguing with you when he brought out the lineup card?
Well, yeah, I got Bobby Wine and Dallas one day for that.
You threw them both out before the game started?
It was the second game of a doubleheader, and we told him when the game was supposed to start, and Bobby brought the lineup cards out, and he was late. Jimmy Leland's standing there tapping his foot, and we're standing there tapping our feet. And so when Wine came out, he said something smart. And I said, well, Bobby, all you're doing is bringing the lineup cards. You can go back into the clubhouse now because you're gone. And so I think it was the first time he'd ever been kicked out. It might have been the first time he's ever kicked out.
Wow.
So now Dallas is going to take up for him. I kick him out. And the game hadn't even started,
Oh, wow, that's great. All right, is there a pitcher? Pitchers and catchers involved in balls and strikes, obviously the most. Is there one pitcher that you can think of that would complain a lot about the way you called balls and strikes?
Well, yeah, Gaylord Perry. Of course, I had Gaylord when he couldn't throw hard anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this was with I think he was with San Diego when this happened, but he came into Philadelphia and he struck Mike Schmidt out on 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
Not one pitch was close to the plate. And Mike was jumping out of his shoes trying to hit him. And he walked Greg Lazinski hitting behind him all 3 times. And late in the game, he's throwing the pitches just off the plate. I'm calling him a ball. Mm-hmm. And he's waving his arm like outside, inside, whatever, And after he did that about 5 times, I said, why don't you throw that weak stuff over the plate? He said, if I do, they'll hit it. So
that's a good point. That's actually a good point. Hey, was there the thing that I don't particularly care for? It's a ball or a strike, but when the catchers would take the glove and bring a ball and frame it up as a strike, and some of the umpires bought into that nonsense. Was there a catcher that did that more? And did that fool a lot of the umpires?
No, I think that the Braves were very good at trying to cheat and get pitches because they would set the catcher up on the outside corner of the plate. They wouldn't get behind the plate. He'd set up on the inside or the outside. And they intentionally screamed at the younger umpires. And, the guy's going along and he's having a good game. The pitch is just off the plate. And then there's Bobby Cox in the dugout yelling, where was that pitch? Well, I mean, after a while, the kid's going, maybe I'm messed up here, but they look like they're outside, So anyway, they were big on picking on younger umpires, and I think that helped their staff. But I was really lucky when I came to the big leagues. I came up with Jerry Crawford and Eddie Montague and Jim Quick and Eric Gregg, and I mean I came up with guys, and our supervisor was Al Barlick, and if somebody was yelling at you from the dugout, Al expected you to shut him up. So I was lucky I didn't have the problems that these younger kids had.
Right.
So. Yeah. And I can remember one of the Reds players, Adam Dunn, said, I like it when you umpire because somebody will yell out of the dugout and you just look over there and they all get quiet as a mouse. They're not very brave when you're looking at them.
No, I mean that's part of it too. Hey, umpires that made mistakes. We know about Jim Joyce. Actually, he came to Philadelphia after he screwed up perfect game for that guy. I think it was Detroit. And he admitted probably after the game, but he admitted it. I talked to him when he came in. It was the first game of the series. It was a Sunday game, and then he came to Philadelphia. But there's plays that I remember, um, and one that will eat up Philadelphia people if they're old enough to remember the '77 playoffs, Phillies Dodgers. Uh, Boa makes a great play at shortstop. The ball deflects off of Mike Schmidt's glove. Boa grabs it. Bruce Fleming was at first base. Boa grabs it, throws to first. I think Davy Lopes was the runner. Phillies ended up losing that game and losing the series. They were the best team in baseball that year. I think Bruce Fleming fell asleep. And my point is, do umpires ever, when you guys talk to each other, ever admit, I did screw up that play? The guy, Davy Lopes, was out. He called him safe because I think he relaxed when the ball went off of Mike Schmidt's glove. But Boa was quick enough to pick it up, throw it. He was out at first base. He was out. Do umpires ever talk to each other and say, you know what? I really screwed that play up?
Oh yeah, all the time.
Mm,
And no one feels worse than the umpire that made the mistake. And a lot of times you don't have to tell them you thought they made a mistake. But here's the funny thing, and a lot of people don't really understand what the psyche of an umpire is. You have three ways you can miss the play: lack of positioning, lack of concentration, and lack of timing. That means wait till it's all over. And I'm sure when that play happened, Bruce didn't wait till it was all over, because I remember the play you're talking about.
mm,
And he called it extremely fast. And I'm not here to second guess Bruce Fleming or any other umpire or anything, but there are only three real ways you can miss a play. Lack of positioning means you weren't in the right spot to see it. Now, sometimes the players take you out of position. And lack of concentration, that means I wasn't paying it. That's what you're accusing Bruce of doing.
I think he relaxed and thought the play was over. Yeah.
Well, then that would be lack of concentration.
Right.
And lack of timing was he didn't wait till it was all over, because he actually called that play very fast. But my point is, if you keep it in the simplistic terms of that, you got a good chance of getting it right if any one of those things you did was correct. You see what I'm saying?
Yep. Absolutely.
So believe me, no one wants to miss a play. No one. And I tell people all the time, an umpire has three responsibilities. His first responsibility is to the game of baseball. And that doesn't mean the commissioner's office.
Right.
His second responsibility is to the union, or to his profession. And that doesn't mean the union. That means the profession of umpire.
Gotcha.
And his third responsibility is to do what he knows in his heart is morally honest and correct. And if you do those three things in that order, nothing you do will be wrong. You'll get chastised for it. You'll get chewed out for it. You'll get yelled at for it. But that's your responsibilities. And you don't remember, well, you would remember this because you know it. You're the only official representative of baseball on the field.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else is playing. You're responsible of getting the game conducted in the proper fashion. And if you look at that and look at how umpires umpire, they're going to be people that are much better umpires at what they do than you really are accustomed to judging them. Because
Right.
You'll say, I didn't like this guy because he kicked out Dallas Green. I didn't like this guy because he yelled at Mike Schmidt. Well, I can't say that because I never saw anybody yell at Mike Schmidt. but my point being, an umpire has his responsibilities, and most people don't understand what that is.
Right. Do you like the robo? I don't think they're going to go to robo umpires for home plate. Do you like it or not like it?
Well, we did our tests on it when I was still working, which is over 4 years ago now. But that machine misses more pitches than the umpires. We had a guy named Andy Fletcher who was a real good umpire, and when they put these machines in to grade everybody, they would get a disc from the office saying, "This is how many you missed. This is how many you got right." So I was working with Andy, and he came to me and he said, that machine said I missed 6 pitches. Said I missed 6 pitches yesterday. I said, well, I was working second base and I didn't see anybody argue. What are they talking about? He said, I don't know. They said I missed 6 pitches. I said, well, how many did it miss? He said, oh, it didn't track 14.
Wow.
I said, well, let me get this straight. It didn't track 14. That means it didn't call anything. I said, we're going to start using a machine that misses twice as many pitches as you did. And he didn't think that was very funny.
Boy, I don't think they'll ever go to it. I want the ability for somebody to argue with an umpire, and really the only area that I think that could happen would be home plate. So I take that away. With instant replay, you've taken away
Well,
all that.
when they put instant replay in, they thought the ejections would go away. The first year they had instant replay where they could challenge stuff on the bases,
Uh-huh.
ejections went up 30%. Did you know
Really?
that? Yeah,
No.
because the managers would come out and argue the replay. And that's
Uh,
that's an automatic ejection.
well, you can't. Yeah, you can't argue the replay. All right, Joe. A couple of personal things. Where did you get the name Cowboy Joe? Were you a singer to get it, or
Oh
how did you
yeah,
get the name Cowboy Joe?
yeah. I cut an album and I did it at Gillies Studios down in Texas. And the first song on it was Blue Cowboy, which I actually wrote. I sent it to Merle Haggard, and his fiddle player sent it back, and he said, if Merle cuts this, it'll only be a B-side record. You won't be able to do anything with it. He says, why don't you put it out and it'll be a novelty kind of thing. So I did. And my first residual check came from Japan. They played it over there. So,
You don't sing anymore, right?
oh yeah, every New Year's I'm singing in Nashville at 3 different clubs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You don't have any instrumental behind you, but you want to give us a couple of bars, or would that scare people?
It might scare people.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
It's really classy. That album has done very well for me, and it's really funny because Randy Marsh's daughter says, "I really like that. Take Me Out to the Ball Game you did." And I said, "I didn't sing on that." She said, "That's why I like it."
You know what? Then I haven't heard it, but I agree with her. Hey, Joe, I do appreciate you coming on. Thanks. Always have fun. A guy, you know what? I'm just going to tell people from now on, there's no reason that they should dislike you. You're not a bad guy, except when you're on the baseball field.
Listen, I don't want you to ruin my bad reputation.
Okay.
I have a good bad reputation. So don't ruin that,
Next time I talk to Larry Bow, I'm going to ask him, one of the things that he didn't like about you. He said, that son of a bitch. That's what he'll say. That son of a bitch.
Yeah, but he says that about everybody.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. So it's no different. Hey, Joe, I again, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Had fun. We'll do it again sometime.
Okay. Take care.
Thanks.
Thank
Take care.
Right.
Cowboy Joe West. Thanks. Oh yeah. I mean, see, when Bo was fiery, I'm sure he had all kinds of, as a player and as a manager, with Joe West. But Joe didn't want to really jump on any player too bad. All right. The first thing I want to do is tell you again that our presenting sponsor, Stillwell Financial Advisors, Jeff Stillwell. You better set yourself up down the road because you never know what's going to happen with the economy and all the other kind of stuff that we have going on. And Jeff Stillwell Financial Advisors, absolutely, positively, 100% can give you some great ideas. Just give them a call. Check it out. See if you guys can connect in some way. But Jeff always has good advice. I know he does in talking to him. 732-343-0813. All right. I have some business to take care of. The last show, we had a question to give away a Chickies and Pete's gift certificate. And the Chickies and Pete's gift certificate goes to Angelo. I'll try to say this correctly. Soldivia. Hey, Angelo, whatever. Angelo, you win a Chickies and Pete's gift certificate. The question was, what was the T-shirt that Jalen Carter was wearing after the game that he got ejected? And the answer to the question was, this year I'm a rich guy, which I thought was kind of obnoxious, but nonetheless, hey, listen, players make a lot of money even when they're not making the millions and millions. Also, I want to tell you, and you can't wait too long on this. Audi Westchester, you only got maybe a little over a couple of weeks, and this is going to close out very quickly. It's going to close out soon. Let's put it that way. If you want to get a great deal and lease a 2025 Audi, an electric car, the Q6 e-tron for $499 a month, or an Audi Q4 e-tron for $399 a month, you'll need $5,295 down for the Q6, $4,156 down for the Q4, plus taxes and registration fees. Stop by Audi Westchester, check their new facility out, grab a cup of coffee, grab some snacks, look at some new vehicles, which is always fun. The people are great. You'll have a really good time. Special offer won't last long. 2025 Audi Q6, the e-tron for $499 a month, obviously, and the Q4 e-tron for $399 a month. Check it all out. Not going to last long. Check it out at AudiWestchester.com. And I mentioned this earlier. I'll say you wasted the summer having a good time, setting up your property. Look at what Piazza Property Pros can do for you, whether it's a fire pit, whether it's a hot tub, whatever it may be. They can take care of your property. They can also build you a pool. Now, you didn't get one this summer, you procrastinated. Check them out. They can still do it before the end of the year. 25 years of experience with Piazza Property Pros, specialize in turning that property of yours into a great, great reality. Unmatched customer service. They don't subcontract, which is a good thing. Landscaping, pool maintenance, excavation, fencing, whatever it is you need on your property, I'm sure they can do it. Call them. They'll work within your budget. 610 566 2608. That's 610 566 2608. Or check them out at piazzaoutdoor.com. I will have a question towards the end of the show to win a pair of Oakley sunglasses, too. So when I have that question, we'll get you up there. And we'll tell you how to register to try to win. All right, so here's what I want to do now. Nick Sirianni, and I want to explain myself. Where did I put? Here it is. I want to explain the situation. Nick Sirianni speaks on usually normal weeks, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then after the game. So Monday he spoke. There's really not much to say because there was some time off. Today, you're getting ready, the first day of practice. All right, what's going on? He won't tell you about injuries, but they signed a running back, which indicates to me if they signed a running back and they gave up, I think they gave up 2 draft picks, that means somebody's going to be placed, I think, on the IR. I saw where Will Shipley has an oblique injury. He did not practice on this Wednesday, which an oblique injury is not a 1-week thing. I got to think before Sunday's game, Will Shipley's not going to play. I got to think there's probably a chance with an oblique injury, you might put him on some kind of injured list, which keeps him out. I think it's 4 weeks, but keep an eye out on that. Will Shipley's the guy. That's why they got the running back. I kind of knew somebody had to be hurt. So that happened today. But Nick Sirianni, he's not going to tell you about that. We'll see about that. He'll say, we'll see about that. We don't have to say anything until the end of the week. Okay, I get all that. People know whether the guy's hurt or not hurt. And I understand. But the simplest questions, I want to be straightforward. I like Nick Sirianni. I like him as a person. I like his personality. I really like him as a coach. The players play hard for him. They'll go to the wall for him. But what's so hard about answering the simplest questions that you know the answer and the other team's going to know it beforehand anyway? And the question he had today, it was the first question of his news conference, and it was an obvious one. He knew he was going to get it. He's better hire a PR firm because he's not doing a good job at answering these questions. All right, let's listen to this.
Has Jalen Carter learned his lesson?
Yeah, everything we do with any conversations or anything like that, again, I'll tell you guys again, I know I respect the job that you guys have to do, but I'll always keep those conversations in-house. I'll continue to do that. Much like if I had a conversation with you and we work together and, you would probably expect me to do that same thing. And that's my job as the head coach, and all things like that with any conversations with players, whether it's, of something that happens in a game, a moment in the game, like there's information that I will always keep in-house.
Sure. With respect, though, Nick, I'm not asking about the conversation you might have had with him. I'm asking about
Yeah, and
your
I
confidence.
answered it how I wanted to answer
What
it.
do you think of the league's discipline?
Again, I'm not going to ever get into like the same thing with anything with the league. If I agree with a call, or if I don't agree with a call, if I agree with a discipline or I not agree, I owe the league that same respect. That again, you don't air business out there, so won't get into that either.
Okay. I think the first question, and I don't know if you heard it from the beginning. Let me just make sure. Okay.
Has Jalen Carter learned his lesson?
Has Jalen Carter learned his lesson? Now, there's a simple answer to the question, and the reporter gave him an out by saying yes or no. He's not going to say no. He didn't learn his lesson. So just say yes, and we're going to move forward from that. Yes, that's it. But you've answered the question. Just answer the damn question without. Hey, you think Jalen Carter would be offended if you said, yes, I think he did learn his lesson? You don't even have to get that deep. Yes. Yes. You think Jalen Carter would get upset? No, because Jalen Carter admitted his mistake after the game. Just answer the question, like with the Cooper DeJean thing. Well, who's going to play corner? Well, Cooper can play wide. He can play on offense. That's not the question. And then later in there, okay, if you don't want to talk about the league, it's a simple answer to the question. You don't have to say, I'm not going to get into that. The league makes their decisions. We have to abide by the league decisions, and we move on. I could do PR. This is not rocket science. This is not rocket science. And there's going to be a point, he's a winning coach now, and half the people, probably more than half the people, defend Nick Sirianni for his non-responsored. Somebody put up here, he answered that question perfectly. Who the hell does this reporter think he is asking if someone has learned his lesson, like as a child? Well, it's going to come up somewhere. So you don't get too in depth of, he didn't answer whether he thought Jalen Carter was right or wrong. No, you're wrong. Another fake. Well, I don't even like his name. So the guy, you're obviously an idiot with that screen name. But because I'm not even going to get into that. But the reality is, it's simple. And he didn't say yes. In the transcript, it says, yeah, but that yeah was just so he could pause to think about what his answer was going to be. Pretty simple. Yes. And we're going to move on to the next game. That's the last game. That's it. Pretty simple. It's pretty simple. All right. So I've dealt with Nick Sirianni. This game on Sunday, and we'll talk about it on Saturday, and you can chime in. I think this is a real tough game for the Eagles. The Eagles needed Kansas City to win their opening game. Teams that go 0-2 to start the season have their chances diminished a lot with just making the playoffs. They're not going to get they're not going to get the first seed. And I don't think Kansas City's good enough anyway. Baltimore and Buffalo are the two best teams. But regardless, I think this is a real tough game for the Eagles. I think it's a tough game because even though it's this early in the season, it's a must game for Kansas City. That's why I think it's going to be tough for the Eagles. We'll see. I know the Eagles are a better team than Kansas City. There's more than a few teams that are better teams than Kansas City, but it puts them in desperation mode. And it's a rematch from the Super Bowl. All those things figured in. I think it's going to be tough. So we'll get into that. By the way, I got really. When you bet games, the reason they call it gambling is because it's gambling. I lost 2 games in my picks last week that really pissed me off. There's no way I should have lost the Baltimore-Buffalo game. I had Baltimore minus the 1.5. They were up by 15 with like 7 minutes to go. And then the fumble changed that around. Then how does Minnesota scores 21 points in the fourth quarter to beat Chicago? But I'll be making picks again, college picks. I'm not going to go with the Thursday night game. College picks will be up on Saturday. And again, your donations for the picks, it all goes to Brandywine Valley, SPCA, and Providence Animal Center. And it couldn't go for a better cause. And the donations are not that much. It's very little. Trying to have some fun, making some picks. I had a good year last year, and I'll have a good year this year. But hopefully, I won't get screwed again. Hey, Tony, the Eagles are not going to win 45-10. So we'll have that on Saturday. All right. The Flyers had a news conference today because they're kind of getting ready, not kind of, they're getting ready for the season. They've been practicing, doing a bunch of things. The chairman and CEO, Dan Helferty, and Keith Jones, the president of hockey operations, both spoke today. So I was over in Voorhees, listened to the news conference, and those guys, again, it's the opening one, so it's not. They answered all the questions, and they answered all the questions, and they do a good job. Again, they haven't played a game yet. But Dan Hilferty, who I think is a really sharp guy, I think that, first of all, the Flyers are going to win a championship before the Sixers. We know that. Might not be anytime soon, but I think they're doing a lot of things right and going in the right direction. But Dan Hilferty opened the news conference, talked about their goals, and he said playoffs are not their goal, which I question. Listen to the response here, and I thought he answered it well, but sometimes you got to throw a carrot to your Flyers fans. Here's the question and response.
Dan, I respect everything that everybody here has done. However, when you opened this up, you said success is not the playoffs. How can you explain that to fans, which is what they crave? Flyers fans, that's what they crave. How do you explain that to people, that success is not the playoffs?
So Howard, here's how I look at it. I've started every public conversation I've had. As a fan, last year I was disappointed we didn't make the playoffs. The year before I was disappointed we didn't make the playoffs. And the year before that, although I got here too late. So as that fan, a true Philly fan, I want nothing more to compete for the playoffs. And we're doing everything we can. I think the point that Jonesy made about now we're adding, and you only add when you think you have a shot to be in the playoff conversation. So what I'm saying is, with this long process, this rebuild that we agree we're going to do in a thoughtful and constructive way, bringing young players in and adding other players, it might mean the playoffs. But all I know, we're gonna come together as a group at the end of the season and say, okay, did the players you mentioned, did they continue to improve? We feel we are beginning to get the pieces we need to have that sustainable team, a sustainable level of excellence that leads to playoffs year after year after year.
I think his response, he answered the question, but you got to set goals. They may be high goals. It's not unattainable in the NHL because you never know. Things could happen. The best teams could suffer injuries. The best teams could have a player that's having a bad year. All those things could happen. But there's nothing wrong with having, and this is my opinion, but I think these two guys are really sharp. I think Danny Briere is really sharp, who's the general manager. And I think Rick Tocchet will be a good coach. So I think they're doing all the right things. So there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, listen, it would be a tough thing to do, but one of our goals, we should never not let the players think about the plum at the end and the playoffs. Whether they think they're telling you that if it's not a goal, they don't think they can make it. Well, yeah, sure they can. Things have to happen. Players can play better, but that's just my opinion. It's not a severe criticism, and I think Dan's a really smart guy, and Jonesy's a smart guy, but you got to give the players and the fans something to think. Yeah, it should be somewhere at the end. It might be tough, but somewhere at the end. That's it, in my opinion. It's not a criticism of him, but he was just trying to be honest. And sometimes, sometimes people aren't honest, but I give him credit for trying to be honest and not giving the fans the thought they can go further than they're really capable of doing. So we'll see what happens. The Flyer season starts soon. All right. So now our question. Joe West had some good things to take to develop a question from. So I'm going to tell you, I asked him a question, and this is to win a pair of Oakley sunglasses. Okay. You've listened to the conversation with Joe West. You can go back and listen to it because it's on X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Subscribe to YouTube and you'll be notified when we go live, but it's easy to find I know it's easy to find on Twitter or X, Facebook, and YouTube. But if you subscribe, you're notified when we go live. So I suggest you subscribe anyway. Submit your answer by Friday night at midnight, September 12th. You watch the show on Saturday and we'll have a winner. Here is the question. I asked Joe West, does he remember throwing anybody out, manager, coach? And obviously, I think I couched the question was when somebody came out to give you the lineup card based on something they said, did you throw them out before the game started? And he said he threw out 2 people. I'll give you a hint there. Who did he throw out of the game before it even started? And Joe West did that. So, and you answer correctly, you win a pair of Oakley sunglasses. Again, I want to thank you. Thank everybody for being a part of the program. I want to thank Joe West. I want to thank everybody that I want to thank people that make donations for my picks because it's so nice to help out both Brandywine Valley SPCA and Providence Animal Center. And they have events where they have adoption events, which is a good thing to become a part of. And the thing that I got a donation, not that Seth wanted to make it. I bet him that the Eagles players wouldn't be out there for the Super Bowl banner drop. He said they would. Bet him $1. He said, I'll give you 100 to 1. He gave me $100 bill. And so that $100 goes to, I'm going to split it up between Brandywine Valley SPCA and Providence Animal Center. But thank you for being a part of the Howard Eskin Show. We'll see you on Saturday. It'll be you and me. We'll talk more about the Eagles. Obviously, we'll talk a lot about the Eagles game. I'm telling you, I just don't think this is going to be a stroll in the park. I think the Eagles are better than Kansas. No question they're better than Kansas City. There's a lot of teams better than Kansas City. But we're going to talk about it on Saturday. Thanks to Joe Gangemi for doing all the technical stuff behind the scenes, all the graphics and all the other work that goes into this show. Thanks to Tony Anastasia. And thank you for being a part of the Howard Eskin Show.